I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service through a unique partnership with Alaska Public Media. It is Monday, August 1st, 2022, and if ever you would like additional weather information, you can do it the old-fashioned way using the phone line. The number has changed, the new one posted here, 1-855-937-4977, allows you to get recorded forecast for certain areas. And then if you have any particular questions or something you want to pass along to me, an interesting observation or photo, you can reach me at peter.chan@noaa.gov. And as always, if you'd like additional information on top of what I provide in this broadcast, you can go to weather.gov. It'll bring you to the National Weather Service's webpage that brings up a map of the continental U.S. with Alaska and Hawaii to the lower left. And if you click anywhere on this map, it'll bring up the forecast, as well as any watches, warnings, or advisories that are in effect for anywhere in the country. Allows you to check up on weather conditions and forecasts for friends and family in different parts of the country. This afternoon we have excessive heat warnings and heat advisories for areas of the Pacific Northwest, along with red flag warnings for extreme fire danger, extending from areas of far northern California and Oregon all the way eastward into northeast Wyoming and Montana. Heat advisories also in effect for areas of the mid section of the country. We have severe thunderstorm watches along the Ohio River, and flood watches continue for portions of eastern Kentucky into West Virginia, where eastern Kentucky had the catastrophic flooding that has killed nearly 30 people that occurred last week. Further west, we have flash flood watches in anticipation of thunderstorms as a result of the monsoon moisture that can produce locally heavy rainfall and flash flooding. But here in Alaska, we are seeing some more rainfall. This west-southwest flow aloft in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere that steers the low pressure systems and frontal systems, it will continue this week. So that overall will bring a somewhat cooler and occasionally wet pattern. Certainly not as hot or dry as what we saw early July back through much of June and May. And this continues to dampen the fire danger, which is good news. It's very possible here in the next week or so this could end the fire season, especially if we can get some heavier precipitation to work its way up through the Yukon Valley in areas of east central Alaska toward the Elkhorn border, where the conditions there have been so dry. And it's looking like there could be a little enhanced period of cooler and wet weather centered on August 8th to 10th. A system will be dropping in from the northwest across northwest, west central areas of the state, swinging through central and south central areas and then the east. And that definitely could have some decent precipitation, especially across interior areas that could potentially end the fire season. Looking back on precipitation, Anchorage area for July 2022, Ted Stevens International Airport, 5th wettest with 4.26 inches of rain. The spigot just turned on after the 4th of July, and the few weeks there, mid-month, were really wet. Merrifield had its wettest on record, picking up nearly 4 inches of rain at 3.96 inches, and Lake Hood unofficially had its wettest July on record as well. We're still waiting to get the couple of days of data they missed that had rainfall. And then Fairbanks, to contrast to the north, only had 51/100ths of an inch of rainfall for July, the 6th driest there on record for Fairbanks. So just over a half an inch of rainfall, just to illustrate the variability in summertime precipitation, and also the fact many of the southwest and interior areas were so dry and had all of the fires. Quick check of some webcams here. Point Hope clear, 51 degrees this afternoon. This morning, the state's lows of 32 degrees occurred at Point Thompson and Point Lay further north and west. Eamonnok has broken cloud cover this afternoon. It's 2 o'clock, 56 degrees. And as we go down through the Kenai Peninsula, the salmon fishing season well underway. Light rain showers, 56 degrees. And then further east there along the north central Gulf Coast, Cape Yakataga, they're reporting rain will be developing, moving into that area. 55 degrees. Can't rule out even a rumble of thunder. Quick recap of the fire season. As of August 1st, over 3 million acres have burned, throwing 54,000 on top of that. And that's quite a bit. A very active fire season. There were, at least so far, 558 fires year to date, of which 234 are still active. Maybe not quite as active as what they were, not producing quite as much smoke as what we saw here a month ago, but nevertheless still smoldering out there. But the good news is fire season could be winding down. We're going to see today the rain spreading across southern Alaska, a few showers interior, otherwise other areas dry with generally light winds. It'll stay wet for the Panhandle. Coming up here, another round of rain tonight and on Tuesday. Drying and a bit of a warming pattern for the interior and south central. Wednesday's looking to be the nicest day. And a quick check of fire danger expected for Tuesday. That's tomorrow, August 2nd. We still have an area of high to very high up there around the Yukon Flats, but as you can see, it has greatly diminished from what it had been just a few weeks ago before some of the more significant rains moved in, especially across the southern half of the mainland. So on the satellite imagery, you can see the enhanced, brighter cloud tops now spreading across the Gulf toward the eastern Gulf. There could be a rumble of thunder out there toward Yakutat. Otherwise, another band of rain will be pushing into the Panhandle here this evening and overnight, and continuing into Tuesday. Rain continues back through the Anchorage Bowl. The rain is falling down here as I record this broadcast. Further west, there will be another low pushing up across the western and central Aleutians as we go through the day Wednesday. Right now, we're starting to see some showers off to the southwest and south there of Adak, indications of an approaching warm front. Here's the weather map this afternoon. There is one front that's there. Warm front pushing up into the central Aleutians. That'll be the next weather maker. Back up through the northwestern Gulf, low pressure will continue to press eastward and gradually weaken, but a broad area of rain and rain showers extends from along the Alaska Range and especially southward down into the Gulf. Further north, areas of fog continue along the Arctic coast as well as out over eastern areas of the Bering, especially from around the Bering Strait southward. For later tonight and early on Tuesday, that low continues to press eastward up through the northeastern Gulf, but weakening. And then the next low is going to deepen a little bit as it crosses through the western and central Aleutians as we push through the day. On Tuesday, that'll bring some more rain down there across the Aleutians and some perhaps as high as gale force winds. The low will just continue to weaken over the northern Gulf and there just off of the Panhandle. Could be an isolated rumble of thunder there along the Alcan border, but otherwise just a few scattered showers. And overall, the trend will be as we get into Wednesday for things to begin to dry out through the interior and south central areas. And right now, by Wednesday looks to be the best day for a good chunk of the mainland, especially there along the central Yukon River, as well as south central areas around Cook Inlet and the western arm of the Alaska Range. But you can see that low pressure there trucking across the lower central Bering, heading toward the southwest coast, having impact there later Wednesday and Thursday. So low temperatures Tuesday morning will generally stay above 50 degrees in many areas of south central and the Panhandle. Panhandle will be cooler Tuesday afternoon with the rain. Areas of low clouds, fog, highs upper 50s to near 60. Should be less than the rain of showers around the Kenai and up through the Anchorage Bowl, Mat-Su valleys. Temperatures may rebound back into the 60s. Lows generally 50 or better across much of south central and the Panhandle Wednesday morning. And the Panhandle stays on the cool side, upper 50s, around 60 for the day Wednesday, but could get back up into the lower 70s. Anchorage on up through the Mat-Su Valley all the way up to Talkeetna, as well as the west side of the Kenai. Got my old Michigan roots coming back in there accidentally. Anyways, Yukon Valley lows near just above 50, 30s along the Arctic coast. Tuesdays could see still a few lower 70s as we get up there toward Bettles and on over toward Fort Yukon. Wednesday morning lows generally upper 40s to near 50, the Yukon River, 40s along south of the Brooks Range, Seward Peninsula, mid-upper 30s along the Arctic coast, and a little more in the way of warming with a little more sun. Number of places could get well into the 60s to lower 70s there as we go through the Yukon Valley up through the Alcan border. And then out there through the southwest, lower 50s for the interior. Could see some 60s trying to rebound, especially middle areas of the Yukon Valley. And then Wednesday morning lows, upper 40s to near 50 degrees, pretty much region-wide. And Wednesday afternoon, we could see temperatures 60s to near 70 beginning to pop up, returning there near McGrath. And here is the 6 to 10-day temperature outlook. A very good likelihood of below normal temperatures centered on the southwest interior, especially between the 8th and 10th of August. And that's going to translate to above normal precipitation centered on the central, east central areas toward the Alcan border, right around Fairbanks. That very well could help to end what's been a very active fire season.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
It's now time to look at your aviation weather if you have a flight planned Tuesday or into Wednesday. Low pressure is going to continue to lift across the northern Gulf toward the northeastern Gulf and weaken. With it, we do anticipate some additional showers and rain moving into portions of the Panhandle, lingering back through areas along south of the Alaska Range, but letting up at least a bit. Further west, another low is going to be moving into the western and central half of the Aleutians. We're in this west-southwest flow pattern aloft. As we get to mid-upper levels of the atmosphere, these steer the low-pressure systems along the Aleutian chain in lower bearing and then pushing across the southern half of the mainland and into the Gulf. Tuesday morning, IFR conditions will be prevalent, especially from Yakutat westward through Prince William Sound, Kenai on over into the west side of the Alaska Range, also long areas of the North Slope and Arctic coast, and then again back toward the western central Aleutians. Tuesday afternoon, we see IFR conditions prevalent along the Alaska Range, also into the northeastern Gulf around Yakutat and up into the northern Panhandle, Haines and Skagway. And then we see IFR conditions that are going to be spreading eastward along the Aleutian chain from the central into the eastern Aleutians, and that's that frontal system that will continue to progress eastward with the low remaining in the lower bearing. This is Wednesday morning. We expect IFR conditions there, especially along and north of the eastern Aleutians and the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. Finally, Wednesday afternoon, we see the frontal system arcing into the southwest with IFR conditions accompanying that, extending down, especially North Pacific side there of the Aleutians, eastern Aleutians, and into the Alaska Peninsula. Still MVFR conditions prevailing over the Panhandle, but much of the interior seeing VFR conditions as things do improve. Visibility and the at least amount of precipitation diminishes, though still some scattered showers, isolated storm could pop up areas of the interior and especially along the Alcan border. Anatuvik Pass on Tuesday is looking to see IFR conditions become MVFR, especially IFR conditions there on the north side of the pass on up into parts of the North Slope. Adigan, same thing, IFR becoming MVFR with the north entrance, the north portion of that pass attending IFR, especially early in the day. Lake Clark will see IFR become MVFR, but Merrill should hold on to generally IFR conditions as we go along the Alaska Range. IFR conditions will hold at Rainy Pass as well as Windy Pass, and further eastward, look for MVFR conditions in the morning there at Isabel, giving way to IFR conditions. Same thing for Matasta Pass, MVFR conditions becoming IFR as additional moisture and some precipitation works its way southwest to northeast. Tanita Pass should start out IFR but become MVFR, and that'll be the case for Portage Pass, IFR early in the day becoming MVFR. And then finally, in the northern Panhandle, MVFR conditions should deteriorate to IFR conditions as we go into Tuesday, midday and afternoon. Freezing levels are highest across the lower Gulf, Haida Gwaii, and extending along the eastern Aleutians upwards to 12,000 feet. They do taper and fall off to around 8,000 feet across much of the mainland interior. And looking at the icing potential, we could see some moderate icing between 12 and a flight level of 20,000 feet over portions of the Panhandle on Tuesday. Interior with some scattered showers, a few isolated strikes of lightning between 9,000 and a flight level of 18,000 feet, and then finally back out toward the west with that low pressure and frontal system working its way through the Aleutians between 12,000 and a flight level of 20,000 feet. Strongest level jet stream winds at 30,000 feet are northwesterly 115 knot jet max that extends from the Gulf back across the southwest coast, and then we have another wind max to 105 knots from the southwest pushing up into the western half of the Aleutians. For 9,000 feet, 700 millibars. We see strongest winds south of the Alaska Peninsula, extending back toward the central Aleutians out of the northwest to west, and then turning southwesterly, 60 to as high as 75 knots, and bringing it down to 3,000 feet, with the low pressure tracking through the western half of the Aleutians and the frontal system arcing ahead of it. We do see winds upwards of 45 to 50 knots across the eastern and central Aleutians, as well as some 40-knot northwesterly winds there at the entrance of Cook Inlet in the south end of Kodiak Island. This will translate to potential for some isolated severe turbulence across parts of the central and eastern Aleutians from the surface to 3,000 feet, bordered by considerable moderate turbulence east or west of that demarcation. So if you do manage to get out, please have a safe flight.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us once again is our good friend Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. Thanks again for joining us, Eric. We really appreciate it, as always.
Happy to be here, Dave.
Thanks. And, you know, we're going to ask you some more satellite questions here, but, you know,
Okay.
Since you're a regular guest, we're going to give you a riddle this time, kind of a trick start to the show.
Okay.
How do you see a polar bear in a snowstorm?
Sounds like a challenging question because
Okay.
the polar bear is white and the snowstorm's white.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Well, in the world of satellite meteorology, you couldn't, because the spatial resolution of this instrument that we're going to talk about today has 375 meters resolution, and even the most well-fed polar bear will not be 375 meters across.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to run into such a
No, it'd be a
creature,
bad day.
would you? In the satellite meteorology world, the equivalent would be, how do you tell the difference between clouds and then an area that has no clouds but's covered by snow,
Right.
a piece of ocean that has no clouds but has sea ice? All three of these are white. The snow, the clouds, the sea ice, it's all white. So how, using satellite data, can you tell someone where the clouds are and where the clear areas are? This is important for aviators. Mariners want to know, in the ocean there, this white stuff, is that sea ice or is that just a cloud? How do we tell the difference? And it turns out, if you look, say, at a picture of Alaska from the springtime, March or April, and it's high noon, so we're getting a lot of sunshine. If you were riding on a satellite with your human eye, look down, everything's white.
Right.
And we've got a picture of Alaska from early April, and we're seeing some of the lower elevations in south central Alaska are melting out, getting some brown ground there, but otherwise there's a whole lot of white on the image. What areas are cloudy, but what areas are clear and covered by snow or ice? It turns out that if we leave the visible spectrum behind a little bit, see, a satellite has multiple channels in the electromagnetic spectrum that it can look at. Part of that's visible light, what we see as humans, but there's a lot going on at other wavelengths. If we add in something that's called near infrared, what we couldn't quite see, but we're getting into that infrared territory, there's a magical property that we can exploit.
Secrets to find.
Oh yeah. This is actually powerful and almost magical, that at a slightly longer wavelength, when the sun shines down on Alaska and then it bounces off back to the satellite, at that near infrared wavelength, it turns out that snow and ice will absorb that wavelength, but liquid water, like liquid droplets in a cloud, will reflect it back. And that's not the way it works in visible. You know, visible, it just bounces off of all those targets the same. But at near infrared, snow and ice absorbs it, and the liquid will reflect it back. Liquid cloud droplets will do that. And so an image where everything looks white suddenly becomes colorful. And the way this recipe works is that the clouds look pink, and the snow-covered ground and the ice-covered ocean look blue. Suddenly now, we're able to see the polar bear in the snowstorm. We're able to see where the clouds are and where the snow is and where the ice is. This is a powerful advantage. Consider the case zooming into the Bering Strait area. What if you were asked to brief a pilot who wanted to fly, say, from Kotzebue down to Savunga or Gamble and had to fly VFR, visual flight rules, so they had to stay out of the clouds? Could you use a satellite image where everything is white to provide that pilot any guidance?
It'd be pretty tricky.
Very tricky. And that's why we have to go to this other recipe where the all-white polar bear in the snowstorm becomes more colorful. And now we can tell the pilot, aha, this is a cloud you want to stay out of, but over here, sure, it looks white in the visible spectrum, But what we're doing, we'll show you, oh, this is just snow-covered ground, but it's clearing, so you can fly right through there. Visual flight rules. Same thing for a mariner who might want to get down to St. Lawrence Island, say, but has to avoid the sea ice. This product has applicability there as well.
Wonderful.
It's an amazing new technology, so many new channels. The satellite that makes this imagery actually has 22 different channels that it looks at.
22 secret decoder rings.
22 secret decoder rings.
Okay. You know, I liken this to an activity I had in the car when I was growing up. We go on long car rides, and we do all the work in these activity books to, you know, stay calm, cool, and collected for our parents who are trying to get us across the state. But to get the answer, the real answer, you had to apply that red sheet to see the answer or the secret path or whatever the message was in that activity book to get you onto the next page. And it's also like a photography filter, right? If you're taking a lot of pictures, you can apply different colors to see different parts of that image. I mean, that sounds a lot like what you're talking about.
Oh, you know it. The information is in there all along. We just have to combine the channels in a way to reveal what's in there. And by the way, you're dating yourself. So you didn't have an iPad in the back of the car?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, we have, lastly, for dessert, there's a great image of this same kind of recipe. We're looking at South Central Alaska the first week of January. In first week of January, the sun, even at noon, is really low on the horizon, barely up. And in this image, the fun thing is the shadow of Denali. We can see the shadow of Denali over a lower pink cloud deck.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And Denali at 20,000 feet casts a big shadow. So this is another, just for fun, kind of application here. This is called multispectral satellite imagery, and it's the future. And happily, the future is now.
Oh, that is fascinating. And 22 different secrets that can be revealed from just one satellite tool that's floating overhead. Eric, thanks so much for joining us again. We can't wait to have you back and telling us more secrets of satellite technology that are passing over us every single day, many times a day, over Alaska and helping us all the way in many different parts of our lives. So thanks so much for joining us again.
Well, happy to be here.
All right. And thank you for staying with us. We'll be back with a little more weather here in just a few minutes. And of course, we'll have more Alaska weather facts anytime online.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and let's conclude the show with the sea ice edge. Starting out here, before we get into the marine forecast, we continue to have ice along the Arctic coast that will continue to slowly melt off through the mid and late summer. Areas of the Chukchi Sea are fairly open, though we do have some ice there along the Russian coast. Some of it has pulled away from the immediate coastline. But as I mentioned, just a slow melting process here as we go through the latter half of the summer. For the southeast panhandle, inner channels, winds will generally be southeast to south, 15 to 20 knots, waves 3 to maybe 4 feet. The outer coast, winds will turn a bit more westerly to southwesterly, 10 to 20 knots, waves generally between 7 and 9 feet. And we have another round of rain moving in this Monday night into the day on Tuesday. For Wednesday, things will quiet down further. Variable winds across the central inner channels, a couple foot waves, southeast winds to 10 knots, Ketchikan, Metlakatla. And then Lynn Canal is looking to see southerly winds around 10 knots, waves 2 feet. For the outer Gulf, winds will generally turn to the northwest, 10 to 15 knots, and waves running 6-7 feet. Winds become more variable as you go further east, or I should say west of Yakutat, heading on over toward the northwest Arctic or Gulf Coast. Winds will be variable to westerly there in the vicinity of Prince William Sound, with waves running just a couple feet. 10-knot variable winds there on the northern third of Cook Inlet, and as we drop down to the entrance of Cook Inlet to just northeast of Kodiak, winds will be out of the west, 30 knots, with waves 7 to as high as 9 feet. For Wednesday, winds across the region will generally be around 10 knots, westerly 10-knot winds, 2-foot waves in Prince William Sound, and winds through mid and upper Cook Inlet will be southwest 10 knots, waves a couple of feet, and then look for westerly winds of 20 to 25 knots at the entrance of Cook Inlet to just northeast of Kodiak and southeast of the Kenai Peninsula. Across Kodiak Island and much of the Alaska Peninsula, winds will be westerly on Tuesday, 20 to 25 knots. Waves on the North Pacific side, 6 feet, Shelikof Strait, 8-9 feet as you get further offshore of Sand Point and Chignik. Areas of the Bering westerly winds there, 20-25 knots, and waves running about 7 feet. For Wednesday, winds will generally turn to the southwest, around 15-20 knots in the vicinity of Kodiak Island, picking up to 25 knots as you get down toward Sand Point and Cold Bay. Waves on the North Pacific Gulf side, 7-8 feet, and 4 to 6 feet on the Bering side. Across the Aleutian chain, a low pressure will be tracking through the western half of the Aleutians on Tuesday. Ahead of it, southeast to south winds as high as 25 to 30 knots, especially through the central Aleutians. Waves on the North Pacific side, 7 to as high as 11-12 feet south of Adak and Atka. And on the Bering side, 4 to 5 feet. On Wednesday, the core of strongest wind and highest waves will be passing north of the central Aleutians. 35-knot gales there from the southwest, and southwest winds generally 25 to 30 knots across the eastern half of the Aleutians. Waves 8 to 11 feet on the North Pacific side, and anywhere from around 10 to 11 feet on the Bering side, with locally higher waves as you get further north of Adak in through the central Bering. Along the southwest coast, winds will generally be out of the west, 15 to 20 knots from Nunavik Island, St. Matthew, south through St. Paul and St. George, with waves of 5 to 6 feet. West-southwest winds 10 knots going up into Norton Sound, and waves only running a couple of feet there. Winds will become more southerly through Norton Sound and south of St. Lawrence Island, 10 to 15 knots, waves 2 to 3 feet. And then look for southerly winds turning easterly from around St. Paul and St. George to St. Matthew, picking up to 25 knots. Waves 10-11 feet in the vicinity of St. Paul, St. George, and near 7 feet at St. Matthew. And then finally along the Arctic coast, look for northeast to east winds 10 knots, waves a couple of feet. Southeast winds 15 knots from Utqiagvik down through Point Lay and Cape Lisburne, waves running a few feet there. And then through the Bering Strait, winds southerly there across the lower Chukchi Sea, 15 knots and waves running a few feet before turning westerly north of St. Lawrence Island with waves of 3 feet. And on Wednesday, winds will generally be south-southwest across the Arctic coast, waves 2 to 3 feet. Look for southwest to south winds through the lower Chukchi Sea, 20 knots and waves 4 feet. And then down through the Bering Strait, north side of Nunavik Island, winds will be out of the south at 15 to 20 knots with waves of 3 to 4 feet. Quick check, low pressure tracking through the western Aleutians on Tuesday. That'll lift north up into the central Bering, with quieter weather returning to the interior, especially south central.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.